or we give it a second for it to capture. And then we go. And we are live. That was swift today. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode. Today, we are going to discuss Module 4 in the ACE program as part of trying to integrate our learning and consolidate some of the things that we felt were important to keep in our toolbox going forward. I will be joined today by some fellow coaches. Kathy, incidentally, has her camera off, so her window is not showing on the YouTube window, but she will be with us for just a little bit. Hello, Suzanne. Before we start going into specifics, I would like to just take a second here to talk about copyright. I mentioned that we all here took the ACE, which stands for Accelerating Coaching Excellence course in 2022, and we all became enhanced practitioners. Some of these materials and insights that we will be discussing were also taught in this ACE Coach Accelerator program. So there is copyright attached to some of these materials. And we refer here now the copyright to David B. Peterson and 7 Paths Forward LLC, which I think David Goldsmith is a part of. So we're using these items with permission. So please be mindful of that. There, I found the stop share button on my 3-screen setup here. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Somebody else might drop by later, but otherwise it's just us beauties here. So Module 4. What were some of the highlights, or what would be the first highlight that you would talk about here? Maybe Suzanne, why don't you get us started?
Okay, so the Module 4 had a couple of components. Once they were talking about note-taking and being present. Then it was touched on the radical candor, and yeah, just the train of thought and how important it is to, in order to go deep, we need to be direct. And I think what stood out most for me was the 5 levels of needs that were described. And I think that was the biggest change in my practice, really listening in to what are the personal values, or get clarification, and then the existential needs and identity attached to it. Oh, thank you. Exactly. This is, those are the 5 levels of needs. On the surface, it could be more task-oriented than symptoms, some needs that are solvable, and then going into personality values and existential needs and identity. And really fine-tuning my listening where the issues that are presented lie, and try to dive in deeper to get to the existential needs and identity level. So that was really the highlight for me.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for me, it was a strong reliner and in alignment to the logical levels by Dilts, which are sometimes attributed to Bateson. And there too, we go from kind of this environment into, from context more and more into these personal values and belief systems as we go in. And one of the learnings that is often taught when you learn about that model is that any issue that presents or is felt acutely at one level can only be solved if you look at the level above. And so if you have, for instance, a capabilities issue, very often you will need to go into a belief level in order to solve it. If you have a belief level issue, then maybe you need to go into identity and so on in order to address those. Kathy, are you still with us?
I am. Yes, thank you.
Would you like to check your audio is working?
Oh, yes. I didn't want to be making any noise in the background. So there was a quote that was shared during this section, actually a couple of them, but it kind of just reminds me, I recently finished a coaching contract with 3 executives in a county government, and I'm getting a letter of reference from them, and one of them said something, and when I read it, I'm like, oh, do I want that in this letter of reference? But then when I saw this quote again, I'm like, okay, it's good, because the quote is, my aim is to agitate and disturb people. I'm not selling bread, I'm selling yeast. And the reference letter was saying, yeah, sometimes she was so direct it was painful. But he said that he appreciated it and was going to continue coaching even individually as it is. So yes, I love that quote. You got it right there. Your mind was thinking the same way.
Miguel de Unamuno. I actually, there were several quotes in the slides that were presented during the course, and this is the only one that I put into my personal slide deck, which I show excerpts from here. And it's really a very powerful quote, because sometimes we do need to be that yeast. We need to be that catalyst that makes things bubble up and percolate and grow and so on. Because if you're just a people pleaser, the quintessential cheerleader all the time, you might not be as effective.
Yes, and then looking back on my notes later on, when it came in to talk about the zooming in and zooming out, I have a handwritten note that must have been said during the session. And it said, am I agitating you enough as a particular question that we could ask?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. How does this resonate with you, Suzanne?
Absolutely. I mean, looking in terms of where we grow, we need to be out of our comfort zone. And ourselves, we can set stretch goals. And working with a coach, I think that's exactly where the tension lies. You need a bit of tension to be able to grow, and you need to be a little bit of pressure to be in your performance zone. So finding the sweet spot to not overdo it so people shut down, but enough and with care and compassion. I think that's where the radical candor comes in as well. Mary Beth O'Neill has the backbone and heart. Like, you need a backbone. You can't be too floppy. You can't be too rigid, and you need to be compassionate, and you shouldn't be over compassionate, and you shouldn't be stone cold. So, and there's always a tension between those, and each situation requires a different approach, and each situation looking at the issue and the people who are in relationship. So just being mindful that that creating tension is good, and it's needed in order to grow and make change.
Yes, thank you. With your go ahead, Kathy, and then after, maybe I'm going to put up a slide so we can actually maybe share with the people who don't know anything about radical candor what it is all about.
Yeah, and I might have to hop off over that, but I was just looking through another note, and I know when I first started coaching, which was 10 years or more ago, that I was worried about people liking me, but someone during the module said, my job is not for you to like me, it's for me to be effective in helping you learn and grow. And that is so true, because sometimes we can get caught up in our own emotions and feelings, but we have to set them aside to really serve our clients.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have to pop off, but I hopefully will see you next week.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks for joining, Kathy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, Suzanne, it's just going to be us two beauties holding down the fort for the rest of this. Please allow me just a second here to share just a couple slides. So the radical candor was actually popularized very much by Kim Scott, and you guys should check out her TED Talk. It's definitely very well worth listening. Otherwise, on First Round Review, there's a fantastic write-up that kind of follows this TED Talk structure. And why doesn't this go forward? Okay, so radical candor. So essentially what Scott says is she says that there's essentially two axes. And again, I think that it brings up very, very well, Suzanne, this tension that you mentioned about, on one hand, your level of care. How much do you care, respectively not care about your client? And then how much are you willing to challenge directly or not? And we see that the quadrant that's labeled radical candor comes out of an intention of caring and this kind of purposeful, well-intentioned challenge. And again, it's as coaches, we work, for the client, with the client. And so I think that hopefully this thing is going to be helpful, because if we do not care, this deviates very quickly into, manipulation or aggression even. And if all we do is care without challenging, we fall into ineffective empathy only mode. Feel free to maybe share an extra word, Suzanne, in case I didn't say it correctly or insufficiently.
No, I think there's absolutely, it's really describing the tension between caring and challenging. And what goes on in my mind is just that's how we are wired, right? Being challenged can be a threat. And the way it's being presented is really important to not have a threat response in the person you are communicating with. Because we know when in threat responses with adrenaline and cortisol being up, you don't have a collaborative relationship. They are just trying to protect you and probably deflect and not even able to listen what you are saying. So I think that's as well where the psychological safety comes in. You need to have trust and rapport, and to be able, and then it's how you are presenting it is huge. And knowing if the person you're having the conversation with needs a strong sense of belonging, which is one area that our limbic system is constantly scanning for threats, that needs to be pre-established. Otherwise, the conversation is probably not successful.
Yeah, because I find from experience that even if you have a strong rapport, even if you have set your intention and be very clear about it, some people only can handle a certain amount of challenge, a little bit of this yeast in tiny doses, because otherwise they do go into this mode where they shut down, where it is too much, where they do not have the self-confidence or just a mindset to deal with it, the resilience that comes with it. So just pushing on these boundaries of the comfort zone, but always being so attuned essentially to the emotional state of your client that as a coach, you can kind of gauge how far you can push. And then again, always even pre-establish this notion that if it's too much, say no. Tell me, I might not know. And there is this trust and this psychological safety that the client is absolutely free to say, I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
And that's fine, right? It's better that you establish those kind of ground rules beforehand than getting to a client that shuts down, and then, the session or the entire relationship can be going So I think having proper ground rules, set from day one is very nice. Actually, one of the other things that was said in the course is that this radical candor, this challenging in a good intention with caring, is actually a moral imperative of the coach. And I fully agree with that. Just being there and pleasing the client and being, like I said before, like this eternal cheerleader and fan, and just always saying, yes, you're right, and so on. The client might go home feeling great, having been reassured and so on, but is it really to the best benefit of the client and to what they want to achieve? And again, I really believe that discomfort is the fuel of change. It's the price you have to pay for growth. And so, we have to be clear about that with the client, even in words, not just assuming that they know, but putting it on the table. And again, I think that once ground rules are established and you have this really solid rapport that they know that you have these positive intentions towards them, even if at some point you push too much, hopefully it's going to be easily recovered. And so.
Well, and I think one piece that I have taken away from some readings, and I can't recall what book and who the author was, but in terms of establishing the ground rules and the intent ahead of time, and then even in the situation, asking permissions. Is it okay? Because it could be that, generally, but today something else happens and I'm not, or the client is not in a good spot and this will be too much, or it's a topic that, no, right now I don't want, or I can't go down that path. So just being mindful and asking for permission when challenging, and then taking whatever comes and go with it.
Yeah, actually, a verbiage that I use on occasion is that I say, hey, something popped into my head. I'm going to put it in the room and see if it resonates or not. And then tell me what it brings up. So it's just like this maybe sometimes abstract idea, and what you want to gauge is their reaction to it. And it's if they go for it, sometimes you will hear like, oh, absolutely, why didn't I think of that? Or, oh my God, you really hit it on the head. Or sometimes, no, not at all. But that also is a very valid data point to move forward, that it wasn't that. So what else could it be, right? So definitely very, very interesting. Yeah. So radical candor was a big topic in this, and I think that there were even collective insights that were given from the group as a general. And one of them said that radical candor is telling the truth in love. That was the way that one of the participants framed it. And again, also linking to what Kathy said earlier, is to be courageous and not to be too preoccupied in your own being and sensing and thinking with your clients liking you. Okay. Because liking. You're not there to be liked, you're there to be effective and help your client transfer.
And I think it as well goes into another element that our limbic system is scanning for threat and rewards, and is certainty. If you are putting something out there and you don't know how the other person will receive that information, it creates uncertainty. And it creates a possible threat response in you. So it's a little bit counterintuitive, because we always crave reward responses. We want dopamine and oxytocin. That's where we feel good. So that's where the establishing and saying yes and providing solutions, that's where we get our dopamine. and consciously saying, okay, the need for the client is to be challenged. I don't know how they react. They might not like me. It's creating uncertainty for me. Yeah, that's the discomfort that we as coaches have to be aware of and step into intentionally.
Yeah, that we make ourselves vulnerable to this threat of the client, of breaking the rapport, of the client getting up and leaving, of losing the business, of just being ill-perceived or not liked anymore. It plays the whole spectrum of possibilities there. And so sometimes you just have to go there. That's your job. That's your job. Fantastic. And so, great piece of reading there. I would recommend it to everybody. We had a second piece of reading, and that one was, I'm just going to pull this up so we have the correct verbiage here. Sorry, I do not know where I have my buttons. There's too much going on my screens here. I'm so sorry. There we go. So the second reading that we had was The Art and Architecture of Powerful Questions by Eric E. Vogt. Sorry if I don't pronounce it correctly. And it was all about powerful questions. And it started off incidentally with just their definition in that paper about what a powerful question is. And with your permission, Suzanne, I'm just going to read these or go through a couple things here. A powerful question stimulates reflective thinking. So stop and reflect and maybe get to something new. It challenges assumptions, big one there. It's thought-provoking. It generates energy and a new vector to explore. It channels inquiry and promises insight. You end up with a new kind of aha. It is broad and enduring. Touches a deeper meaning, and it evokes more questions. And so we touched already on some of these. So this paper was actually quite well chosen. One of the things that we talked about earlier was the 5 levels of need, or, the different levels of need. And here we saw, another one that they see here is what they refer to as the linguistic architecture of powerful questions. And, there's at the base of the pyramid here with low power is just a regular yes, no question. And then you move up in terms of power all the way to the why questions. It doesn't mean that low power questions are not sometimes needed. Sometimes you have to ask, did I get this right? And you have to get the yes or the no. Not all questions can be why questions or how or what questions, for instance. I'm going to close this. And so there were other things on here, but what stood out for you, Suzanne, in that particular paper, besides the levels of need?
Well, I'm a visual person, so having the triangle with the levels is a helpful tool that I can keep in my mind. And as you said as well, it's sometimes you need a yes and no answer to clarify or really solidify something for the client in terms of what do they want to tackle. If you start a session and there is multiple topics, and then to narrow it down, sometimes you need to present it and it needs yes and no, where do you want to go? But to have a more creative approach and to get into different perspectives, that's where the why and how and what questions are the most powerful and allow a shift in thinking, moving out of patterns for the client.
Right, because the way that I see this whole framework of these powerful questions, it's a guide for us coaches to be able on the spot in the moment to dial up the intensity or dial down the intensity. And, not to preclude that maybe we always stay at the superficial level with these low impact kind of questions, but sometimes to really be aware and choose consciously a particular type or particularly formatted question in order to be able to achieve the impact that the client needs at that particular moment. And so it's just a framework for us to keep in mind. It doesn't mean that, closed-ended questions are bad and you should always aim for the why question and so on. But it's that we are aware that we have this whole plethora of possibilities at our fingertips, and that we are aware when we are, for instance, at the superficial level, or when we have moved into levels based on identity and belonging and things like that. Okay.
And as you said, I think the why and how and what questions, they catapult you more on the needs, beliefs, value level.
Right. There were a couple other things that I had pulled out when I made my own slides for this. With your permission, let me just see this just for 1 second. So they talked in, Voop talked in this paper also about the 3 dimensions of powerful questions. So the pyramid that we saw just now was the architecture axis that is represented here. And then he said that, yes, you should also be aware of, how intense are you? How powerful is your question with regards to meaning versus context? And where are you situated on this axis regarding scope? And for instance, he mentions that questions in terms of scope, questions which encompass more people, more volume, more time, more concern, something that's just greater in scope, tend to be more powerful. And in terms of meaning and context, that touches on the 3 areas we saw before in terms of assumptions and deeper meaning and new areas to explore. And actually what resonated a lot with me in this paper was the whole thing about assumptions. I'm a big believer in always double checking assumptions and expectations are just also kind of our assumptions about a future state. So it kind of is in line with this. And so they also mention here that we have kind of these 4 things that can happen with assumptions, and they also kind of put a grading on it. Creating a new assumption is less powerful in their framework than reinforcing one that exists, or even stronger still, altering or challenging a existing assumption. And really hard is to get rid of an existing assumption that is no longer valid or of value or correct. And so I think that also was a really interesting way of looking at it, because it ties also already into belief systems, and what do we really believe to be true, and based on that, how do we then expect or assume things to work out. It also touches on culture, right? Because we very often hear this word that the fish is not aware of the water in which it swims. And this is kind of a similar thing. Some of these things are so self-evident, and so true that we might not even be aware that they're assumptions. And so sometimes talking to a third party who always asks you like, is this really true? is an interesting exercise. What do you think, Suzanne?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it really, for me, it ties into the patterns that are running subconsciously in our mind and where we are reacting to if they are running subconsciously. And this is really changing beliefs, is bringing issues, patterns to consciousness, and then make decisions and being able to change. And eliminating patterns that are not serving us anymore. That's really the highest, the biggest bang for our bucks in coaching. And there's a lot of awareness and willingness that needs to go in and practice reinforcement. I don't think it's a thing that happened overnight. I think all of it is a process that needs time. And yeah.
On the other hand, what I quite often see is that insights come in families. It's like they hang out together. If one domino falls of a new insight, very often it has kind of this blooming effect of, oh, and this then, is a consequence of that. And if that is truly not true, then this thing also isn't true. And so it really has a kind of growing effect, like to really come to one aha moment. On the other hand, too, it's very often that it can be used, or it has effects in completely parallel areas of your life. You might have made a breakthrough on a personal level, and all of a sudden some behavior, some impact at work might change, or vice versa. So there's, these more fundamental, it starts with insight and behavior, but then it goes into truly identity of how we live our life and how we see our position in our greater contexts. Can really change. You mentioned indeed that it is a process, and very often what I find is sometimes lacking is that, yes, you have an insight, a breakthrough, and it's this moment during a coaching session that is so powerful and so exciting that people think that is enough, that just coming to the insight will be enough to create change over time and so on. And I don't think that holds true in all cases. I think that very often you need to have a conscious plan then of integrating this breakthrough into your life, whether it was on a personal level, social level, work level, or whatever. You need to kind of then say, like, this is a great insight, and now what? What are we going to do with it? What's your experience, Suzanne?
Well, absolutely. And I think that's exactly how our brain works in how to change patterns. I mean, neurons that fire together, wire together, and you are trying to break those firings together in up, and your thoughts have an autobahn. That's how I always explain it. And you need, in your insight, you are choosing to go on a maybe a little slower road off the autobahn, and to be comfortable there, it needs practice. And then, neuroplasticity is going off the autobahn over and over again until it becomes comfortable. And then slowly this road, the more you travel, will become your new autobahn. It doesn't happen over time. It's the repeat firing, the repeat changing of patterns in thinking and behavior. And it takes time. Looking through it from a movement perspective, if you are a sports coach and let's say a swimmer needs to adjust their stroke a bit because it's inefficient. They go out of the water. They train certain muscles in isolation to make them stronger. Then they are putting it together still outside of the water. They filming it so the person can look at it. And then they go in the water. And it's all the micro changes and repetition, and it's up to 10,000 repetition until this new movement pattern becomes automatic and you don't have to think about it. The same holds true with our thinking patterns. It's, doing it once, it's great. And change does not happen there. You have to repeat it over and over again until it becomes your new norm.
Yeah, thank you for the Autobahn analogy. I actually, as I was teaching, and I was trying to incite my students to also do the fair amount of repetition needed. I always told them, like, you're on this really beautiful path through the woods, and now you have to deviate from that, and you have to go through the brush and create, push down the branches and everything, and do that often enough that in the end, that path that you so laboriously try to create is as beautiful or better even than the one that you had. And where I am most acutely aware of this, and thank you for your swimming example, Suzanne, is imagine you're a pianist, which I do play the piano a little bit, and you learned a piece with the wrong fingering. It becomes part of your muscle memory. It becomes part of just how you do it, and you play fast through this brilliant thing, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's a wrong note, or I cannot. Yeah, that's the bad one. Or I cannot speed up enough with that fingering, because sometimes playing something at medium tempo and then taking it into a fast tempo, if your fingering wasn't right from the beginning, you can't unknot your fingers fast enough to make the move. And it is painful because your body, one moment of inattention and you have used again the old fingering, and that undoes 50 repetitions of the new fingering that you have done because you have gone down the wrong path again. Painful. So unless you have some discipline, there's a big word, some discipline and some planning and some accountability in order to take this breakthrough and integrate it into your life, it's very often wasted effort. And unfortunately, a lot of novice coaches, I think that the in-session breakthrough is enough.
Well, I think it goes,
yeah.
So I think it goes back to how to change habits. That's why a lot of New Year resolutions don't stick. You want to make changes, you want to lose weight, you want to be more active, and you're setting goals that are stress goals, not stretch goals. So how do you break it down in small enough pieces that you can be successful moving towards, knowing attaining the goal takes time, and you have to repeat something new over and over and over again until you reach the goal.
Yeah, it's also why so many training programs or workshops don't work, even if the material presented does make sense. It's because it is left in that room on that weekend, and it's not taken back to work, let's say on Monday morning. It's not transferred at all. So that's why I think coaching, by its very nature of accountability and the very fact that it is something that is not a one-off, but hopefully something where you meet clients regularly, and doesn't need to be every week, mind you, but over a certain amount of time. Just the fact that the client knows that they're going to meet with a coach, and that the coach likely is going to ask them, again, radical candor, how they did, not to blame, just to help. I think just that little bit of accountability pressure there and pressure in a good way, can help the client to actually get something done and not forget about it entirely.
Mhm.
So in terms of going deep, there were just a couple other things that were mentioned. Please allow me to just share. This was also in a separate document, some of these things. So we already touched on making questions personally relevant, to connect with the important goals and values, truly about what matters to the client. Creating a space for reflection, we talked about it, and sometimes that includes silence, letting them ponder and think. And, it's obviously just one thing, one particular option here. I also like this wording here of don't chase rabbits, but hunt the big game, right? Because it's sometimes possible that we just go down literally these rabbit holes, and it fits into this analogy, the rabbit holes, and get sidetracked and miss the forest for the trees. Yeah. Do you have anything to say regarding these couple points here before I move to the next slide?
No, I think it's all captured very well. And yeah, touches on the action reflection cycle. You have an insight, and then you need to create action to practices and cement it, and then reflect on, did it work? Do I need to make changes? What do I need to do more of? And then slowly, in continuous improvement, go where you want to go.
Fantastic. Yes. And you see that that's also part of this toggling back and forth. We talked about zoom in, zoom out last time during the last thing, but the insight reflection in sorry, wrong word. Sorry, English problem, that insight and reflection, alternates. That's the word I was looking for, was action. Yes, it happens in your life, is definitely what you were saying there. And I really like that in the course here they touched again on the default mindset of curiosity. I think it cannot be mentioned enough that we have this total acceptance, and most importantly, no judgment. We are not there to judge the client or put blame on anything or pressure them in a bad way. It's all in terms of trying to have them expand their potential options. And so intention, I think, is a very big part of all this. And I think that transcends, how they say here, all these frameworks and how you should do things, and specific recipes and coaching recipes to follow, but rather being in the moment, truly attuned to the client, and with the right intention is going to move you forward. Very important here is to be aware as coaches where we are at, where our preferences are. Are we trying to teach something here, or shift the mindset, or get them to see things our way because we are so certain that we might know the answer and they should see it too, rather than having the client figure it out themselves? I think that's probably something that resonates, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That's, providing solutions, mentoring. As I said, that's where we get our dopamine, and it's so easy and tempting to tap into that space. And we shouldn't rob our clients to make their own discovery and create their own dopamine and reward system, because then it's easier for them to continue those habits. Like insight always easier than if I'm telling you what and how to do things.
Because if you come to the solution yourself, and even if you came up with the most powerful question, even if your question becomes really, 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 really clear and strong, and you grapple with possibilities and stuff like that, when the answer clicks into place, it's going to be velcroed in your mind that much more than if it's just a superficial kind of passing of insight. Oh, here is a question, okay, and here is an answer, okay, but there's no true visceral kind of attachment to the outcome of this question. And so, grappling and making mistakes even. You make mistakes and it's painful. If it's painful, it's going to make it that much more sweet when you come up with the answer. And those are kind of the learnings that
So what always sticks with me is fail is first attempt in learning.
It's the first attempt at learning. And I got always so cross also at my students when they would, like, the first thing when they made a mistake is that they took the eraser and wanted to radically erase it. I'm like, no, take the highlighter, the red pen and like frame it, because you just figured out a way not to do it. And this is the way that your brain is going to want to do it the next time. Teach it that that's not the right way of doing it. And it's really, it's painful, but that's how you learn.
Exactly. Awesome.
I think that that touches on most of the things, doesn't it? That were in that particular course. And do you have something else to share before we close up, Suzanne?
No, I think it was a lot of great insights, ways to look at it from different perspective, tools that I find really, really helpful. And in combination with starting fast and then going deep, it allows us as coaches really to bring great value to our clients in a compressed time. And we know that time is of the essence for a lot of our clients. In that regard, really helpful in enhancing how to coach.
And even if a client has committed, let's say, to monthly sessions over 6 months or something like that, or a certain amount of sessions over a specific period of time, that doesn't mean that every session shouldn't be really effective and impactful. So I think that going fast to get to a core issue and helping them to go as deep as they can in order to come out with some insights before planning a possible integration into their life is a good way to do it, because there's no doubt that next month there's going to be another thing to work on. It always goes like that. And so great. I do thank you so much, Suzanne, for the opportunity to discuss this. We will be back in a couple weeks with module 5. I can't believe we're already up to 5 next time. And it was really lovely to review this material. And I hope it was as helpful to you as it was for me.
Absolutely. I mean, it speaks to the action reflection cycle. We went through the course last year, and having the opportunity to go back, reflect, grab out a bit more, it's really cementing my learning and practice. So I'm grateful for the opportunity that we are doing it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I will see you again. Everybody, thank you for listening. I hope this was helpful. If you like any kind of this kind of comment, oh, sorry, tired. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe to the channel and drop any questions you might have into the comment boxes. Okay, so thank you so much. See you again next time. Thank you, Suzanne. Bye-bye.
Bye. Good day.